After only half a year on the job, Harvard President Claudine Gay is now caught in the middle of a firestorm for her comments at a congressional hearing about anti-Semitism on campus. It's already cost University of Pennsylvania President Liz McGill her job, but as of this recording, Gay's employment is still up in the air. That's as one of the school's two governing boards, the Harvard Corporation, met today in the wake of some major donors pulling their funding to the school, demanding that she step down. Meantime, many faculty members have since come out in support of her. But what do Harvard's students feel about all of this? Well, to discuss that, I'm joined by Claire Yuan, staff writer for the Harvard Crimson. Claire, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I know you've been covering this topic for a while now.
Yeah, my co-writer and I, Miles Herzenhorn, we write about central administration at the university. So it's really our job to talk with President Gay as well as Provost Garber, the governing boards. Of course, you mentioned the Harvard Corporation, and also the second highest governing body is the Board of Overseers. And so, you know, we've really been following them and watching them. Obviously, nothing this year has come even close to how massive of a moment this is. And also would love to mention Elias Shizgal, who actually wrote about the faculty support that you mentioned. Also just, you know, it's been such a big collaborative effort to really get this covered.
It sounds like there are a lot of hoops to jump through, given all of those layers of administration, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, you know, you mentioned that we do know that the corporation is meeting this weekend. We've reported basically anything that's happening right now, the support that President Gay is getting and still the criticism she's receiving is all in the context of we are waiting to see what the Harvard Corporation is going to do. They could do what the MIT Board of Trustees did and come out in very firm support. Or, you know, as you mentioned, President McGill did not necessarily face quite the same, you know, strength of support from her Board of Trustees. So it's all sort of in the background of that. But, you know, the corporation is kind of a secretive body. They don't necessarily tell people that they are meeting. They are not very open about necessarily what is being discussed. But I think it's a reasonable assumption that this is on the docket for today.
When you saw the testimony on Capitol Hill, as someone who's been reporting on this for a while, what were some of your takeaways? What did you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we actually, Miles, another reporter, Nia Irakwe, and I did a lot of the reporting around that day. It was a long day of watching a very long testimony. You know, there were times when certain representatives were repeating lines of questioning that were almost identical to ones, you know, their colleagues had repeated hours before. By the end, you could clearly see that, you know, like President Gay told us, right, one of the reasons why she said that last exchange with Representative Elise Stefanik didn't go quite the way that she wanted it to was because there were so many questions and the sort of barrage of questions and sometimes a very aggressive manner made her sort of lose the grounding principles that she wanted to return to. I think some of the takeaways we had were certainly that, you know, Elise Stefanik, Representative Stefanik, really sort of took control in a lot of moments. A lot of her colleagues ceded time to her. But, you know, there were also moments where several of the presidents, including President Gay, kind of pushed back against some of the accusations that were put forward. For instance, they mentioned the fire report on freedom of speech on college campuses, which had Harvard last. And on a couple occasions, President Gay said she firmly, you know, rejected that characterization of the situation on campus.
So we know that since early October and the conflict in Gaza and that region has really been a conflict in and of itself. You know, we know that students have been at odds as well at campus with protests and things like that. What has that piece of it been like reporting on, but also students with differing ideologies?
Yeah, no, it's been a tense time on campus, and I think that's something we've noticed, you know, since October 7th, tensions really spiked. Right after that, there are obviously a lot of students on campus for which this is a really, really personal issue. And in a lot of ways, that anger was also sort of fueled, I guess, by a perceived lack of support from the university on both sides, this desire for the university to do more to combat hate in all of its different forms and to make sure that students feel safe. And, you know, like you said, there have been a lot of vigils and protests and rallies on campus. We've reported on some that have happened very, very recently. It's something that is still an ongoing issue, and certainly President Gay and her administration is facing a lot of criticism from students for not doing more.
There's also been some, you know, criticism in terms of who gets to call the shots in terms of when a president is being called to step down.
Right.
Is it donors? Is it students? Is it faculty? Is it one of the other many boards that Harvard has? And we know that, you know, there's been an op-ed in the Boston Globe really calling that into question, and other reporters have reported on that. What's the sentiment among students around that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think from the perspective of students on campus, given what happened with President McGill at UPenn, really a lot of attention on the Harvard Corporation, in particular senior fellow Penny Pritzker. You know, we want to know, is senior fellow Penny Pritzker going to have that conversation with President Gay asking her to step down, or is she going to come out in support? You know, as senior fellow, she sort of speaks for the corporation. It indicates the corporation's support. We've seen in the past when former President Larry Summers was asked to step down, that was, you know, senior fellow at the time, James Houghton, had a conversation with him that preceded his resignation. So in general, based on what's happening at UPenn and what's happened previously at Harvard, it's kind of all eyes on the corporation at this point.
And you mentioned the corporation can be secretive. I can't imagine that students and folks who really are calling for transparency, I can imagine they can be frustrated with that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that I think the average student doesn't know a lot about, but because of the large spotlight on UPenn after what happened with President McGill, I think people are maybe directing their attention a little bit more to what's going to happen with President Gay after this weekend.
Do you think folks are also thoughtful of, you know, President Gay is a historic figure in Harvard, you know, first black woman to lead the school. Do you think that that's a consideration among the students? Like in terms of the call for her to step down, you know, maybe some folks will say, let's give her some grace. She's only been in the job for half a year or something like that.
Right. No, I think that's definitely something that people on campus are very aware of. Obviously, when President Gay was selected and when she was inaugurated, that was a huge moment on campus for students, faculty, and also alumni and affiliates who maybe weren't even on campus, but were just so proud of the university for making this historic step. You know, we haven't done a ton of reporting on how students have been very vocally supportive, because in a lot of ways they haven't. You know, people are locked down into finals. It's a crazy time on campus for students. Everyone's just sort of in the library. But we have seen that a lot of faculty, especially this weekend around Sunday evening, really rushed to support President Gay. You know, there's a lot of desire to give her some grace, you know, pointing to the fact that she did tell us in an interview that she was sorry for the remarks that she made. And a lot of faculty have said that certainly mistakes have been made. Certainly not everybody is happy with how things have been going. But perhaps the call for her to resign is taking it a little bit too far. Do you think depending on what happens after this meeting with the corporation or the discussion with the corporation, do you think that that will embolden, you know, any sort of anti-Semitism, or have there be, or the opposite would happen on campus, where you're going to see one group feel like they're the prevailing opinion? Or is there a thought around that? I'm not sure I can speak too well to that.
Yeah.
I think there is...
Has any of the groups spoken to you all and been like, once this happens, this will happen, in terms of the groups that will be protesting on either side?
I think not necessarily anything recently. Okay. There were certainly groups that, you know, students have occupied University Hall and made various demands, but I don't think there's anything major recently, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens after this meeting. Claire, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.